All right, so the stage is set for the high-stakes Donald Trump-Vladimir Putin summit meeting in Alaska for a potential deal to bring about peace in Ukraine. The American President Donald Trump will be greeting his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin at his plane after touchdown in Alaska, roughly about 12:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time. The meeting between the two leaders is going to last, or expected to last, for anywhere from 6 to 7 hours. So as Trump heads for Alaska, he sent out a pretty strong message to Ukraine. He has said that he would let Ukraine decide on any possible territorial swaps. Now, Trump has sought to assuage such concerns as he boarded the Air Force One. And this comes as the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was not invited to the talks, and his European allies fear that Trump might sell out Ukraine by essentially freezing the conflict and recognizing Russian control over 1/5 of Ukraine that it has won in this war.
Are the territorial swaps on the table? Will you be discussing that?
They'll be discussed, but I've got to let Ukraine make that decision. And I think they'll make a proper decision. But I'm not here to negotiate for Ukraine. I'm here to get them at a table. And I think you have two sides. Look, Vladimir Putin wanted to take all of Ukraine. If I wasn't president, he would right now be taking all of Ukraine. But he's not going to do it.
Mr. President, what did you mean?
Just one thing. What about the possibility of the United States providing security guarantees to Ukraine?
Maybe. Along with Europe and other countries. Not in the form of NATO, because that's not going to, there are certain things that aren't going to happen. But, yeah, along with Europe, there's a possibility of that.
Now, Trump, on the other hand, has also issued a stern warning to Russia. If no peace deal is signed during this crucial Alaska summit, then both the U.S. and the Russian presidents are due to meet at a Cold War-era Air Force base in Alaska's largest city, are seeking wins from their first face-to-face talks since Trump has returned to the White House.
You said earlier this week that Putin would face severe consequences if you get the sense from him that he's not interested. What do you mean by that?
Economically severe. Yes, it will be very severe. I'm not doing this for my health, okay? I don't need it. I'd like to focus on our country, but I'm doing this to save a lot of lives. Yeah, very severe. Thank you very much, everybody.
Now, for Vladimir Putin, the summit is already a big win, as he can use it to say that years of Western attempts to isolate Russia have unraveled and that Moscow has retaken its rightful place at the top of the table of international diplomacy. In a symbolic gesture en route for Alaska, Putin made a stopover in Magadan, a port city on the Sea of Okhotsk in Russia's far northeast. He laid out a wreath of flowers at a memorial in Russia's far east, commemorating the US-Soviet cooperation in the Second World War. So as both sides prepare for the key talks, both Russia and Ukraine have traded fire at each other. The Ukrainian Navy claims that an Su-30 SM fighter jet has crashed near the Zimny Island. The $50 million aircraft, a twin-engine, two-seater multi-role fighter jet, reportedly crashed due to certain, at this moment, unknown reasons. Now, Zelensky says that there are no signals from Russia to stop this war. He's also called for a three-way meeting.
The war continues. It continues precisely because there is no order, nor any signals from Moscow that it is preparing to end this war. They are also killing on the day of the negotiations.
Now, Ukrainian forces have also launched a strike deep inside Russia. They targeted an oil refinery in the Samara Oblast, which processes nearly 9 million tons of crude per year and fuels the Russian military. Now, Ukraine has said that it has blown up the Russian port Olya ship. All right, now joining us on the broadcast, we've got Mr. Fred Weir, who is a journalist and also a political commentator, and he's joining us live from Moscow this moment. Mr. Weir, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. Now, this is a crucial summit. Now, the question that a lot of people want to know is this. What in your assessment, do you think is a negotiation that would be acceptable for Vladimir Putin, who's pretty convinced that he's winning on the battlefield? Donald Trump is talking about exchange of territory. Do you think Vladimir Putin would be willing to exchange territory in a war that he feels he's winning?
Well, this summit is a complete surprise to everybody. If you just remember a week ago, the overwhelming situation was that Donald Trump was about to impose massive sanctions on Russia and its trading partners to force them to the negotiating table. The next day, they announced this summit, and it's very much on Putin's terms. And it seemed, I mean, I've talked to quite a few Russian foreign policy experts who seem to think that the talks between Steve Witkoff, Trump's emissary, and Vladimir Putin in the Kremlin a week ago produced some kind of an outline deal, an understanding of how the war should end. That was what Putin had insisted all along that he wanted, just a roadmap to peace, the root causes solved before he would announce a ceasefire. Now, you see, in the past week, Trump has walked back any idea that there is a prepared agreement, that he's just coming to listen to Putin to see what's on his mind. I mean, this is pure and typical Trumpism. He really produces, a lot of smoke and mirrors around anything he does. So we just don't know. But Putin clearly has come with the idea that he's going to strike some kind of a deal with Trump. And at least what I get from Russian experts is the idea is that Putin will agree to both the Donbass republics or provinces being ceded to Russia, and those parts of Zaporozhye and Kherson that Russia has already taken will be kept by Russia. The lines will freeze.
Right.
And so some swaps might take place because Russia holds Ukrainian territory in Kharkiv and Sumy regions. He might swap some of that for other bits of Kherson or Zaporozhye. I don't know what the details are, but Putin seems to be coming with the idea that there is a deal.
All right, you say that Putin seems to be coming with the idea that there seems to be a deal. Donald Trump seems to be much more tempered in his expectations. His White House press secretary has said that this is more a listening exercise for Donald Trump. But the question is this. Now, Donald Trump does not want to go into these negotiations and agree to terms that would be tantamount to surrender. And what would be tantamount to surrender is to give to Russia the territories that it has already managed to capture in this war and not to get anything back in return. With that being the case, what do you think can be a face saver for both of these leaders so that they can go back home and say that they've both won in this war? Do you think that kind of a middle ground is open at all in these negotiations?
No, I think that Putin has actually jettisoned a lot of his preconditions that he had been insisting on for quite a while. Like, he has left to future negotiation things like Ukraine's neutrality status, demilitarization, rights for Russian speakers. He says he's willing to impose a full ceasefire if these territorial swaps take shape. So I don't know. I'm just a journalist. I'm not Machiavelli. I don't have, but it seems to me that all the battlefield news is disastrous for Ukraine, and the problems are accumulating every day for Ukraine. So I would think that a ceasefire, even at a price, would be a pretty good deal for Ukraine right now, because otherwise, if they don't swap some Kharkiv and Sumy territories for what's left of Donetsk, turn around in a month and Russia will already have taken those territories and there won't be anything left to swap. So that is the question. It's a moment where Russia is winning the war, or seems to be, and they certainly are convinced that they are.
Right.
And Ukraine is on the back foot.
All right.
Should they stop and take what they can now or keep fighting? I think the Russians are perfectly willing to keep fighting. That is the sense I get from them.
All right, interesting. That's an interesting Russian perspective where you say that this is a moment where the Russians feel pretty confident that they are winning on the battlefield and therefore they have a stronger hand in these negotiations. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Fred Weir, for joining us with that perspective there.
Thank you.
And also on the broadcast, we've got my colleague Susan Tehrani, who's joining us live from the United States. She's joining us on this broadcast. Susan, this is the big moment. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin would be meeting each other in roughly about 2.5 hours from now. Give us a sense of the expectation that is riding on this crucial summit meeting that will happen in Alaska.
Well, President Trump has been trying to manage expectations regarding this one-on-one meeting with Vladimir Putin. While he says that it's very important, he constantly diverts to a possible second meeting that's going to be between Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and possibly the United States as mediator in that meeting, even Europeans. He says that he's laying the groundwork, he's feeling out Putin during this meeting, and he says that he's going to be telling us whether or not Putin is game. After meeting him for the first few minutes, he'll understand where the Russian president is standing regarding trying to find some kind of peaceful solution or a ceasefire to the ongoing war in Ukraine. So he's trying to manage those expectations while also really you have the weight of the world on his back and you know, individuals, not only the people of Russia watching, but also the people of Ukraine as well, and then the international community, not just Europeans, but those who have been affected by sanctions, tariffs, threats, and whatnot on the part of the United States for doing business with Russia. So yes, he tries to say that this meeting is not a meeting where I'm going to be negotiating on the part of Ukraine. They're going to have to doing that. I'm not going to be providing any guarantees to Russia. But nonetheless, it's important. It's also important to note that while President Trump makes clear that he's not talking on behalf of Ukraine without Ukraine during this meeting, he may be able to offer some incentives and open the door to business here in the United States that will be interesting and perhaps, welcomed by the Russian president to sort of, open the door to future negotiations. And that's like business incentives here in the United States, possibly. I know he played down the issue of rare earth minerals,
right,
but that's an aspect of it, the issue of trade between the two sides, strategic relationship between the two sides. So those bilateral talks are as important during this meeting as perhaps what is happening in Ukraine.
That indeed is true. We need to see as to how this meeting, of course, plays out. Thank you very much, Susan Tehrani, for joining us from New York and getting us all those updates. We'll, of course, come back to you as this story continues to develop through the day then.